I'm getting ready to paint this do-it-yourself sign, and I'm going to go ahead and videotape the process to show those of you that are interested in a do-it-yourself kit or any sort of sign painting, how easy it is to do with a stencil. You can see here on my sign there's that white masking. That's a stencil that I've created, and I've weeded out the areas where you see the raw wood exposed. This is just a round with a stencil over it. And with just a couple simple supplies, I've got some paint and some makeup wedges. You could use crayons, you could use markers, paint pens, colored pencils, really anything that colors or marks wood. You could use, I wouldn't recommend something like a stain or a watercolor if you're trying to stencil, because that's most likely going to get underneath the stencil. We're already going to have to be pretty diligent to keep the paint from bleeding. So I'm doing this sign. It's just going to be simple with 3 different colors as I showed you. I'm going to have a keyhole hanger that we're going to attach with some super glue. And with our do-it-yourself kits, we offer both full kits that include everything you need to complete your sign to a finished product, or we could send you just the materials such as the wood and stencils if you have your own paint and brushes and glue and whatnot. So again, I'm just going to show you how quick and easy painting the sign is going to be. And the biggest thing, as I mentioned in a previous video of mine, is that you are going to use a really, really small amount of paint, almost to where you think that it wouldn't even show up on your sign. So you are going to dab really lightly into your paint, and that's why you'll see with our do-it-yourself kits that our paint cups are quite small and you'll still have a lot of leftover. So I'm going to show you, I'm dabbing, I should probably show you on camera. So I'm just taking my wedge and I'm dabbing ever so lightly into the paint, and then I have my paper down here that I'm taking all the excess paint off of. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over any of the areas that I want with that color, and this black is going to be the majority of my sign. I'm going to do all my text, and I'm going to do my dog paws in black. So for my first layer especially, I'm going to go super light. The other thing that I did ahead of time is I confirmed that all my masking was pushed down, and this is a bad example because honestly this one is not that great because I didn't plan to make a video, and I can usually just be careful, but just make sure that that masking is no gaps around where you're going to be painting. So let me see, I'm just going to dab really lightly, and this is, I'm not putting a lot of pressure at all. I'm putting just enough pressure to make the paint apply, because if I squeeze down at all, any of that excess paint has a pretty good potential to squeeze underneath the stencil, even though we've burnished it down pretty well. So I'm just going to keep going, and you will find with my videos that they're just, I don't edit them, I show you my process exactly as I go along, so feel free to fast forward me going through this process here. I'm going to, if you do fast forward, I'm going to probably be putting 3 layers over each color depending on how happy I am with the opacity. So these signs, honestly, these are easy enough for children to do if they can grasp the concept of how much pressure, if you can kind of help them with that, really they should be able to make a sign with one of these stencils just as easy. And we have some really cute designs for kids' rooms. It's little cutout designs, and the process that I'm showing you here and that we send for our do-it-yourself kits is the exact same process that I do for a customer order. So I'm doing just as you see right now. This is what I do when I get an order for a sign. So with the do-it-yourself kits, I do it the same way, and it's a really fun way also to these days. So we at our shop at Personalize It, etc., Justice and I had actually gotten everything set up to start in-house paint parties. We got all of our supplies in place. We were getting a lot of designs ordered, blanks. We got all of our aprons made. We had started our marketing literature, and that was literally right around the time that COVID came out. So we started saying, well, maybe we'll do it yourself kits, and we haven't done. But if you're interested in doing these with your friends for Zoom parties, or for the kids for arts and crafts, or arts class for school, it can be done as a group project, but it's kind of you can sit around just as you would at a paint party. You guys could set up a Zoom conference and do the same thing. And really, as I'm showing you here, you don't need an instructor right there holding your hand through this process. Seriously, just keep your paint thin. I probably can't say that enough. You will hear it in previous videos, and I guarantee you'll hear it in future videos. Anytime you see me painting, I will remind you to keep it thin. So stencils like this can be used for lots of different materials. The stencil material might look different, but I'll create other videos down the road to show this. But you can etch glass with stencils. You can paint fabric. You can make stencils for your wall, for tile, for flooring, coasters. You're unlimited. I'm going to move on to the next color while that layer of black dries, and it's because this is, you know, just acrylic craft paint that I put on super thin. Once again, it is going to dry really fast. So to keep things simple, I chose just 3 colors on this sign. You of course can add as much color. You just, you know, each area is stenciled out. You put the color wherever you want. Both my tree and my tent is going to be green today. So again, doing the same. Sometimes it's easier if you pour these out of the paint cups. If they get sent to you in paint cups, you'll probably get a toothpick with your kit to go ahead and work that paint out onto a paper plate somewhere, because it's a lot easier to get your wedge. And depending on the color of the paint is probably, again, and how dark you want it to appear is gonna depend on how many, that will be depending on how many layers you choose to cover it with. We create all these designs that you see for the stencils in our shop, and a lot of them are sold for people that can cut their own stencils if you have a Cricut machine or a Silhouette. And we also offer personalized and customized orders. So if you say have a baby name sign that you would like made, we'd be happy to put together we'd love to put together a custom design for you. I'm just going back over this one a little bit since I got. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab out my white, and because I'm super thrifty and try not to waste, I'll use the other side of this wedge exactly just to show you how thrifty I am. I think this shirt that I have underneath, my daughter's 26 years old here next month, and I think this was her shirt in 7th grade, and I think this top one was her shirt in 9th grade. A lot of my clothes are her middle school and high school hand-me-downs, so that's how much I love to reuse. So now I'm just painting my mountains white. Again, just kind of little bits on my brush at a time, and keep adding and blotting it off. It's a lot easier to add more than it is to take away. So start really small. Don't try to, seriously, I would use less than you think you should. So we also at Personalize It, etc. have reached out to some people to do some painting for us. And again, this is the exact same process that they will all use for stenciled signs. And I'll show you how quick and easy honestly might have been going a little heavy-handed on this white. We'll see when I take off my stencil. Honestly, just I've tried a lot of different materials, and I haven't met many stencils that are too forgiving. So there is, and this sign is not going to have, it's going to be just natural wood underneath. So we also offer another type of stencil where you could paint your background or stain it, or however you want your background to appear, and then you would apply your round stencil after your paint dries on your background. And you want that to be really dry before you do your next step. But that is, that way makes the project last a little longer. It has a little bit more as far as the steps that are involved. So some people might like that better. The other thing is we can also provide the rounds pre-painted or pre-stained with a stencil on top. If you still want to keep it simple, you're not comfortable applying your own stencil. There is a lot of different methods, and you can send us a message and reach out if you have any requests, any questions. Basically everything that we've learned on how to use the machines that we're working on and methods we used, we learned from other users for YouTube and through trial and error. So we like to be able to pass on what's working for us, and after trying lots of different ways, this has been the most effective. Again, easy enough for little ones to do a project. I just mixed some of my paint. There I go for trying to be cheap, and actually that was because my fingers were dirty. So that's another thing, don't try to rush too much. I'm making a mess of myself, so I should have looked in, but we'll have a little bit of character in that tree, and I'll keep my fingers off the rest. Some people even like to just leave it a nice thin layer. Again, this is all down to a matter of preference and what you personally like as far as the looks. When I'm doing a customer order, and of course each design's a little bit different. It depends if it's, you know, we have rustic, distressed kind of style, but for the most part, if I'm doing a stencil design like this, I'm trying to fill the area in pretty well. It really does depend, but I'd say that's more often than not. So this is only 2 layers with the black, which, I'm gonna go ahead and do one more real quick, just so that it really does show through for you. Hopefully you don't need to do, especially with this paper masking, 3 layers should be good. And if you know, the thicker you get, first of all, your paint gets pretty thick on top and it wants to then peel. So the thinner you can keep it, even, you know, the less layers, even if you're going really thin on each layer, try to keep your layers minimal. And I'm almost done here, and you're gonna see that I go right into taking the stencil off. I'm gonna try to take it off careful so that my paper doesn't fold from one area to the other and touch, but really for the most part I'm just gonna take it off. I'm gonna try to cover that black up a little bit that I made a mess of. Again, just a little bit of a, so when you're grabbing your wood, and I wish I had my wipes here, I didn't bring all my supplies down, but again, my fingers are pretty dirty. I should be a little more careful than I'm going to be right now. So you don't want to handle your wood all over to get paint all over it. And I am just going to now start peeling my masking, my stencil. And depending on the material that you got, there's going to be, some are easier than others as far as removing and how much they stick. But see, I have paint all over my hands. I did this really silly. Usually if I wasn't sitting in front of camera, I probably would have run and washed my hands real quick. But I seem to be doing okay. Knock on wood. Some people would probably recommend here that I use a weeding tool. I didn't grab that either, so that's why I'm kind of getting everything I can with my hands. But you could use, really you should just be able to pull it off, but if you have like a toothpick or I even use a sewing needle sometimes to get these little letters in between, or the inserts of the letters off, I might have to do that. And so again, I wanted to remind you that this sign was going to be like worst case scenario with the bleeding, because I did have crinkles in my stenciling. I wasn't planning to videotape it, but still we got it done pretty well. This is probably the most tedious part, is getting all your little pieces weeded out. And I'm not always the most patient person, so it's not my favorite part. My tweezers are upstairs. Oh yeah, I broke mine, so we'll see if this even works. I recommend, if you don't have the best vision, having your eyeglasses, which I should have right now, because when you paint, of course you're painting over the masking, and seeing your edging can be a little challenging with bad eyes. But again, there's definitely definition there, so it's not all that hard. You can see I'm doing it without glasses. So this here is just, and it's broken, so it's basically like using a dead pen. It's so it doesn't take a lot to get this off. I'm just kind of rubbing over the edge of it with this tool. A toothpick would have done just as well. You just want to make sure that you don't dig in so deep that you are going into your wood, and you want to make sure that you stay on the part that you're trying to remove, so that you don't dig your toothpick or pen or whatever you're using into the portion that you're leaving painted, because it will leave a little mark where you dig into if you do that. Alright, so it looks like this video so far is about 22-ish minutes long. Of course, I did a lot of talking before I even started, and you see in that time I've got the sign all painted and weighted. So really it's pretty quick and simple. You could add more colors, you could, there's a lot of things that you could do to make it more interesting, but the other part I'm going to do real quick, just to show you finishing it off. I have these two pieces for my keyhole, and I'm going to glue them together. Got some super glue here. And I grabbed the wrong one. Okay, let that dry for a moment. And then I'm just going to glue this to the back of my sign so that I have a way to hang it to the wall. You could just leave it resting on a shelf, or some people like an easel, and we also have easels as an option if you would prefer. So I'm going to line up right there. You can see I'm going to let this sit for a minute to dry. Super glue, of course, dries fairly fast, but should be ready in just a second, and I'll show you how it looks secured on there. So he's getting there. So you can see the keyhole there. And I still have to sand. I should have sanded the edges of my back of my sign. You can paint it if you like, but nobody ever sees it, so I usually just sand it and call it good. So we've got the, I'm gonna just make it. I'm struggling here. All right, that's it.